was the recent transfer of the ailing Kenya Meat Commission from the Agriculture and Livestock Ministry to the bastion of the Kenya Defence Forces. Now, President Kenyatta has gone further to place all government planes and helicopters hitherto outside the KDF under military defence. And the CS Ambassador Monica Juma clarified that there is nothing new in this move and that it's in the best interest of the country. She spoke on Spice FM. Listen in.
When I was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we were the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade.
Yeah.
Today, the portfolio of trade is sitting with the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Cooperative Affairs. How come this has not become an issue? And this is within this tenure, you know, and the portfolio of trade is one of the biggest portfolio because we are a trading nation. In fact, you would expect that this would be a big conversation. No, it's not, because there's nothing new. There's nothing wrong about it. And the Department of Cooperative, it's been moved from there. Department of Petroleum and Energy, it's gone to mining, it's gone to energy, it's gone. I mean, listen, there is nothing extraordinary that has happened. And in fact, the notion when you come down to the Meat Commission, for example, this is a state corporation. Again, you will see a lot of movement if you actually do your research. Of the 200 and some corporations, they have been moving everywhere because the idea is to try and place them in an administrative framework that helps them to deliver on their mandate. Having said that, generally, when you come to the Ministry of Defense, I think it would be instructive for people to look at what the mandate of the Ministry of Defense is from a constitutional point of view. The Constitution provides for three key functions of the Ministry of Defense. First, we defend and protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of this nation. That's the core mandate. Second, we offer aid to civil authorities constitutionally. That means that you can actually, and this explains why we do things like when there is a drought, we can provide logistics to move food. When there is a flood, we secure people. When there is an accident, a fire in the KWH Conservancy, we will be there. This is aid to civil authorities, and it is there provided for within the Constitution. Thirdly, if there is disturbance in the country, with the authority of Parliament, we can deploy to restore peace and stability. So those are three. And so anything you see that has been done by the Ministry of Defense, it is actually within that constitutional mandate, nothing outside of it. So the provision, for example, the question you ask about the railway, you know, when we are called to support in the rehabilitation of the railway, it is part of the second mandate provided for in the Constitution.
I think the first mandate is where all attention stops.
Correct.
When you look at the protection of the defense and sovereignty of a nation, that is what everybody hears when we hear the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah.
So then when you see that there is support being offered or that there is activity in what would be otherwise labeled as purely civilian activity, then you think that there is a shift in focus. And I'm being very clear about what, sentiments that have come out over the last few, is that there's a shift in focus away from the sovereignty or the protection of the land.
But you can't shift from your own mandate, as I've explained. Providing civil assistance to our civil authorities does not preclude the mandate of territorial defense and protection of territorial integrity. So it is not either or. We are conceived to deliver on those three, and we are doing that. Yeah. So one does not take over or is not done in lieu of the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how far can this go? I mean,
well, in fact, there's a huge doctrine around civil-mil relations. Huge doctrine, and it is not a new one. If anyone is interested in the history of this, it starts as as early as the debates around the philosopher king and the defenders who protect the protectors kind of debate. It's a big debate. It's a historical debate. And the notion of civil oversight is precisely to balance that, so that you say you can oversight over the protectors, and within the democratic theory, about people's sovereignty over every instrument of power, in this case, the defense force, yeah? But increasingly, and this is not just about Kenya, countries have deployed their defense competencies for a number of things. And if you look at, again, the history of industrialization, a lot of militaries have been the vanguard of industrial transformation. Yeah. So nothing new, nothing new. And I think what is happening now is that the administration is deploying competencies that are within itself to add value, to optimize their value for society. Many countries, including on this continent, whether large and small, whether they're talking about Egypt, whether they're talking about South Africa, whether they're talking about Rwanda, the role of the military in contributing to national development is not a matter of debate. It's a matter of course, and so it is really deploying, and as I've said before, I think the smart thing a country does is to deploy the full range of its competencies. And in the MOD, we have those competencies, and we have been asked to deploy them. We've done it, and it is working. It is working.
It's true. I mean, if you look at the cadres in the military, there's all the professions are there.
True.
And you're highly well-trained and highly motivated officers who serve in our military. But then, if you look at the examples that you've given in Rwanda, if you look at Uganda, if you look at South Sudan, the relationship between the military and the civil is almost one and the same. It starts from one into the other. In this country, we haven't had that kind of direct, say, application of our military. I'm trying to look for the words here. Application of our military in the daily civil, say, aid to civil authorities. It's not daily, it's on one-offs. We have
it's this, very limited.
We have this disaster then come in. We have this and the other now come in. But now it seems to be increasing, and that's what the question is. Why now? What is changing? Is it a factor of the times we are living in, or is it a factor of certain realizations within the civil leadership of the country?
Well, one of the things, for example, even the responses that we are used to, namely responding to emergencies, there is no doubt that the frequency of emergency and calamity is growing. This is not a Kenyan phenomenon. I mean, we are having cyclic drought, cyclic floods, cyclic fires. So it is likely that you're seeing more and more deployment because of this reality. And that reality, in fact, if we didn't do that, would be failing. Would be failing in our core mandate. So that response is not an issue. Well, what has become a big public debate is one issue around the KMC, and really this is a very small part of our aid to civil authority if you looked at it in the totality of the work that we are doing. And I think the question must be, why such public interest, And I've actually been asking myself, why in KMC? It's not the largest portfolio.
Could I attempt to answer that?
Yeah. So, yeah.
If I attempt to answer that, if you look at, just like I said, start with the Kibaki years, and you see military officers coming to serve in the civilian side of government, and then you see more and more. You see retired military officers being deployed as ambassadors. We see retired military officers, well, we have been used to that. Former general gets to serve in a certain board, and that they're offering that kind of oversight of a parastatal. But getting into the cabinet, getting into principal secretary, getting into, inspector general of police, getting into a former military officer who is heading anti-corruption, we are seeing more and more retired major, retired major, retired major general, retired lieutenant, and that's where now it goes into, it's no longer retired, it is current, go to KMC.
No, listen, let me put it this way. First of all, every officer serving in the KDF or in the MOD is a Kenyan. I mean, let's start there. You know, this notion that there are Kenyans who can't serve because of where they were before, I think in and of itself is really misguided. Huh? It doesn't go to, the same questions are not asked on the civilian side. In fact, the civilian side, you say, is this person qualified? The big debate is, are they qualified?
Yeah.
And I wish that was the debate that we were having here. Is this person delivering? Because I think this notion that somebody has been uniformed and therefore somehow they are sinister. You know, they are sinister, and you must.
Well, there's an element of control they want to wield.
Yeah, you know, they are sinister. You know, their work is to control people, and maybe I don't know what else they are going to do with us. Yeah. I think it's a very wrong thing. Let's start from the premise that we are dealing with Kenyans. Okay, are they able to deliver on the mandate? And I think if we ask that question, it would be a proper question to ask, because the idea is to improve on the services. The idea is to improve on the pursuit of the national aspirations in terms of our development plans and things like that. You know, and the question that must be asked, even of this persistent question of the KMC, is there a turnaround? Is there a turnaround? What is the turnaround looking like? And is there a lesson that can be transferable from these to maybe another agency?
Can I ask you then, do you think it can be delivered? Because if we look at KMC, it was not a dying, it was dead. If we look at what was happening in Nairobi, for example, many would argue that the city was falling apart. So do you think then that with the invitation and the entrance then of whether they're active or retired, military officers, doesn't matter, do you think then some order and then some reorganization in the operations of these two, as an example, could yield results?
Well, I think that question can be answered by Kenyans who are receiving the services. I mean, it is self-explanatory. When we went into the KMC, we found a situation. The first briefing I received said, you know, this place slaughters between 3 and 7 cows a day. Facts don't lie. This was the situation on the ground. And we said, 7 cows a day?
A local butcher could do that.
What is the staff portfolio? 347.
Really? 7 cows.
What are we paying per month? You know, we could buy those cows from that money 10 times, 5 times, you know? Do we need it then? And you go in and you say, okay, I need a plan. I need a plan to turn this thing around. And you have 60 days to turn this thing around. What requires to happen? And what requires to happen, happens. What requires to happen, happens. Within 60 days, we began to test the system. Yeah, we began to test the system. And we used a month to test the system. And we were ready. I was satisfied that we could roll out. Right now, we are providing meat across this country to all the defense units. From the 1st of June, we began to provide to the other security sector. We have gone around the country, 17 counties in total that have livestock as their mainstay, to explain the model that we are going to use, and to explain how we will receive, and to explain how we'll process, and to explain the business process. So it is not whether it will happen, it is happening.
So it took 60 days for a plan to be developed, for you to approve it, for it to be put into motion, and for it to actually be actualized.
Yes.
Within 60 days?
Within 90 days, 60 days we began to test, and within 90 days we rolled.
So what was the problem?
The problem was from slaughtering 7 cows, we are at the point now of doing 200, and we believe that by the end of this year we will be doing close to 2,000 a day. We should.
From the initial analysis, why were they doing only 6-7 cows a day?
Well, they could answer that, but clearly there was a lot of there was a lot of systems that were not functional. Okay, number one. There was very